Hello, Mastermind Gaming community, and it's finally happened. After years of catching hard-earned Pokemon from different games and wondering if you'd ever be able to use them again, Pokemon Company has come around again with a new trading and storage system called Pokemon Home. Now, Pokemon Home is pretty similar to the Pokemon Bank on the 3DS. So if you've ever played on the 3DS Pokemon games, you know that Pokemon Bank is essentially a cloud-based storage system that you can use to hold and house your Pokemon and keep them with you as your journey continues through the Pokemon universe. Now, the Pokemon Bank was a very interesting and very welcome inclusion into the Pokemon world because of the fact that before this system was in place, you would have to have two copies and two consoles to be able to trade in between and be able to keep up. Essentially, if you wanted to trade up to the next generation, you'd have to have two different consoles and system link them and do all this trading, and it was just a bunch of shuffles and it was just really time consuming. And in this way, you can actually just transfer directly, keep them all in the cloud, and then when the next game comes out, you'll actually still have access to them whenever that time comes. And I think that's a very good feature to have because before it was very cumbersome and now it's a lot easier. And with Pokemon Home, it is a subscription-based service. However, they do have a free plan. The free plan, you do get about 30 Pokemon you can keep in your Pokemon Bank at any one time. However, if you do pay for the premium version, it is going to be $3 for 30 days, $5 for 90 days, or $16 annually. And if you do pay for the premium, you do get a lot of new features that are unlocked. And then and some of the things that I will be discussing will be paid, and some of them will be free. Most of the premium features just basically expand upon what the features already offer. So for example, I think the free version you can store 30 Pokemon, but the premium version you can store 6,000. So you can either have one box or you can have 200 boxes. So it's a pretty exponential increase in terms of between the free and the paid. And there's no tiered free. It's just you get a discount if you do pay ahead of time. So you can do a couple different ways to trade now. They're going to have GTS. They're bringing that back finally. A lot of people thought they were going to have it in the base game, but it seems now they're including it in this, probably because they can include it with a subscription service. And having a subscription service kind of helps them generate recurring revenue. And I think that's probably one of the reasons they kept that feature out of Pokemon Sword and Shield to begin with, which is kind of disappointing to see that they're going down that route. It kind of makes it feel a little bit more greedy, but I think that overall it's not that bad of a price. If you do play Pokemon a lot, I do think it's worth it, especially with all the features that are involved. And the GTS system is pretty nice because you can put up to 3 Pokemon up, and you can actually ask for whatever you want in return. And it kind of works similar, I mean, in a way to how the 3DS did. I mean, you can actually put up Pokemon finally, just request whatever you want back, and then whenever you log back in later, you might actually have that Pokemon. You can actually sit back and enjoy that Pokemon without having to actually go through all of the conversations to try to barter with people anymore. So I think that'll be an interesting and very helpful addition into the game. Now they're also going to have an option to trade with friends, so you'll be able to add friends inside of the mobile app of the Pokemon Home, and you can actually trade directly inside of Pokemon Home, so you don't actually have to log into Pokemon Sword and Shield. You can actually just trade within Pokemon Bank itself, which is extremely beneficial because the stamp system and the overall online system of Pokemon Sword and Shield is a little bit clunky, especially with the whole code system and things. Being able to just add friends and trade them on Pokemon Bank seems like it's going to be a much better way to handle the trading. You're also going to be able to trade with trainers nearby, and you're also going to be able to get into groups of people that you can trade with, like mass groups of people, I think up to 20. So you're going to be able to actually get in with, say, 20 other people, 20 other friends. You can set a lobby up, and then basically you guys can kind of do trading roulette, where you guys just trade a bunch of Pokemon around and kind of just see where you land. I think it'd be kind of a fun way to do some battles and stuff, being able to just trade some random Pokemon, and then whatever 6 you get are the ones you have to be dealt and you have to fight with. I think that'll be kind of an interesting thing and something we might look at trying later. And I know right now a lot of people are asking what games are compatible with Pokemon Home, and Pokemon Home works with Pokemon Bank, Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu, Pokemon Let's Go Eevee, Pokemon Sword, and Pokemon Shield. At a later date, Pokemon Home will also be working with Pokemon Go. If it's been a while for you, if you aren't familiar, like I said, the 3DS's handheld system's Pokemon Bank allowed you to store up to 3,000 Pokemon from several games. So that means if you do have that Pokemon Bank, it's a pretty easy process. All you have to do is just log on to your mobile app on Pokemon Home, and then it'll give you a code. And once you get that code, you just type it in on the 3DS's Pokemon Bank app, and it'll ask you what Pokemon you want to transfer. Once you accept it, it'll transfer your Pokemon pretty seamlessly. I transferred a couple hundred Pokemon that I had in my Pokemon Bank, and you can look at them here on the screen, and you can see that I have quite a few Pokemon. I mean, there's a couple hundred, and it allowed me to essentially. It only took, I think, maybe like 1 minute. Like after I got the code set up and after I selected a Pokemon I wanted, which was all of them because I don't plan on really playing the 3DS anymore now that the Switch version's out. It was pretty seamless and pretty quick, like I said. Now there are, you can trade up a little bit more. So I mean, like I said, as long as you can get into Pokemon Bank or the Poke Transporter, you can actually put Poke Transporter into the Pokemon Bank, and then you can actually transfer them from Pokemon Bank into Pokemon Home. So there's quite a few options. Now, just for a refresher, people that want to know that games work with Pokemon Bank on the 3DS, so if you have Pokemon Black, Pokemon White, Pokemon Black version 2, Pokemon White version 2, Pokemon Red Virtual Console, Pokemon Blue Virtual Console, Pokemon Yellow Virtual, Pokemon Gold Virtual, Silver Virtual, Crystal Virtual, Pokemon X, Y, Alpha Sapphire, Omega Ruby, Sun, Moon, Ultra Sun, and Ultra Moon. So if you have any of those games, they have the possibility to be moved to Pokemon Home. And another thing a lot of people don't realize is that right now, even if you ever had Pokemon Bank and say you're not paying for it anymore and you're worried if your Pokemon are still there, they're still there. They keep them there. So even if you don't pay for the service after you used Pokemon Bank, so even if you just paid for the month or the year or whatever you did to transfer them to Pokemon Bank, they're still there. And they're actually giving everybody a 30-day trial for Pokemon Bank. So right now, starting a couple days ago, you have 30 free days, everyone does, for Pokemon Bank. So it's extremely beneficial if you've ever had Pokemon or if you have any 3DS games that you're wanting to move forward. This is the time to do it because you have 30 free days of Pokemon Bank. So essentially you can move all your Pokemon from any of your 3DS games, even if you've never used Pokemon Bank before. And you're going to be able to move those Pokemon up and be able to continue on carrying them through Pokemon Home now. Now there is a couple transfer limitations. So you can transfer Pokemon into Home. However, you can only withdraw them into Sword and Shield. So that means if the Pokemon are not in Sword and Shield yet, you cannot move them out of Pokemon Home. So this got a lot of people a little bit worried. So like basically your Pokemon are kind of just stuck in Home now. It's like a lot of these Pokemon that I have here are actually, they're not in Pokemon Sword and Shield yet. So basically what that means is that you can't actually withdraw them. So they're actually stuck in Pokemon Home until either one, an expansion pack comes out for Pokemon Sword and Shield that will allow you to withdraw these Pokemon, or two. The other option is, of course, that they're just going to be stuck here for a little while until either the next game comes out that will have them in it, or we're not really sure what's going to happen after this because they haven't really been too specific on what's going to actually happen, what Pokemon are coming out with the new expansion packs. We know there's going to be about 200 coming. However, we don't actually know what 200 they are. And there's another thing to note is that if you are trying to connect and trying to transfer Pokemon over, if a Pokemon has a move that is not allowed in Pokemon Sword and Shield, which means that it doesn't have an animation essentially, it doesn't have a stat, doesn't have a value, you actually see, if you hover over, say like I hover over Zoroark here, you'll actually see that Embargo, the ability down the bottom right corner, has an exclamation point. What that means is that if this Pokemon was allowed, so like for example, we'll actually use Clefairy as an example because I can actually bring Clefairy into Pokemon Sword and Shield, and even that has two moves that aren't allowed, such as Bestow and Wake Up Slap. Now what that basically means is that if you do withdraw that Pokemon and you put it into Sword and Shield and you try to use those moves, it will not allow those moves to happen. It will say that this move is not available. It is suggested that you forget this move. And if you do forget this move, it will never be learnable again, at least whenever you're inside of Pokemon Sword and Shield. So even if you go to the move learner after you unlearn it, you'll never be able to relearn it again while it's inside of Sword and Shield. So that's an important thing to note. That doesn't mean that whenever the new expansions come out, that we might not see new moves come out with the Pokemon. So I'm sure that, like for example, if they added Cubone, they might add his signature move, the Bone Club, into the game. And right now, Bone Club's not allowed. However, if Cubone gets introduced, Bone Club might also be allowed. So it's important to note that even if you do happen to forget some of these moves, they might become available later. So it might be worth just kind of waiting it out and kind of see when the expansions come out and what kind of moves get introduced with the Pokemon. Because I'm sure there's going to be new moves that are going to be introduced along with new abilities and things. But just happen to note that if you do happen to bring any Pokemon that are allowed in, that if they do have exclamation points near them, that's what that means, is that one of their moves isn't available on their specific either Pokemon or even in the game entirely. And to just be aware that you're gonna have to unlearn that move if you want to have a fourth move or fifth or third or fourth move, depending on what kind of move set that you want to use. And yes, another thing to note is that there are differences between the Switch and mobile versions of Pokemon Home. And I hope in the future they're able to kind of bridge the gap a little bit more on this, because there's some things that I think should be available on both that are not right now. However, I will be showing a screenshot of what all is available on each console, on each version of the Pokemon Home, and you can take a look at that now and pause if you need to. And then just basically, while you can link your mobile version of Pokemon Home with your Switch version, the features you can access differ depending on which version you're using. One of the most basic things is that when you use the mobile version, you can't move Pokemon into Pokemon Home from Switch games. That includes Pokemon Sword, Shield, Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee. And additionally, mobile users cannot exchange battle points, since this is something that is used only in the Switch games. When accessing the mobile version of Pokemon Home, you will have access to global trading with other users, being able to receive mystery gifts, and can check news and battle data. And lastly, one of the biggest other things to note is that Acerebi has managed to tally up 35 new Pokemon that are available thanks to Pokemon Home. What this means is that there's Pokemon, 35 of which cannot be caught inside of Pokemon Sword and Shield, that you can now transfer from Pokemon Home into Pokemon Sword and Shield, so you'll start to see these pop up quite often. A couple of notable ones is the Bulbasaur line, the Squirtle line, and a lot of legendaries. So if you happen to see some legendaries from other versions or other games, then just know that they're not hacked into the game, and that they are readily available now. As long as you've played those games before, you put them on Pokemon Home and you can transfer them into the game. And also the Alolan starters such as Litten, Poplio, and also Rowlet, they're also all available. And then not only that, but it's also worth pointing out that the Pokemon that are already available in Sword and Shield are automatically compatible as well. That means that the normal forms of Ponyta, Rapidash, Farfetch'd, Weezing, Corsola, Zigzagoon, Lanoon, Darumaka, Darmanitan, and Stunfisk can now be used in the regular forms. So that means if you've caught them in a 3DS game and you transfer them over, you are able to bring them into Sword and Shield as the regular versions and not their Galarian forms. However, if you do level them up, or not level them up, if you happen to breed them while you are inside of Sword and Shield, they will breed the Galarian forms. So that means if you do bring a Ponyta or if you bring a Rapidash into the game, then that means that you are going to be basically breeding a Galarian version of that Pokemon. So if you breed a Ponyta inside of the daycare, it's going to, when it hatches, it's going to actually hatch as a Galarian Ponyta, not a regular one. So that's another thing that's important to note. And that's going to about wrap it up for a lot of the core features that are available inside of Pokemon Home. However, I will be releasing videos on walkthroughs on how to do a lot of the things and interact with Pokemon Home and Pokemon Sword and Shield. So stay tuned for those, and in the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section down below, and I'll try to get to them whenever I can. And don't forget to please rate, like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one, guys.